I also want to mention to you that I just launched my podcast swag on Wednesday of this week and have a page for it on my website. And I will also send you the link to it in the podcast description. And I will also send it to you in the newsletter that I usually send out on Fridays. I am now selling t-shirts, water bottles, and a backpack, and they all have the podcast logo and title on it and the tagline. So I am looking forward to watching the sales and seeing who buys them, and spreading the word more about my podcast. Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NVLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. All right, good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depending on where you're listening from. Today's episode will be the third and final part to my interview with Barbara Arrowsmith-Young. And if you haven't caught the other two parts to the interview, I will put the links to those episodes in the description for you. And again, for those of you who don't know Barbara, she is the creator of the Arrowsmith program. And basically what they try to do is they try to help individuals who are neurodivergent have more resources available to them online, and be able to have not only better resources for education, but to be able to have access to them online and in person. And they also are Canadian based, but even though they are Canadian based, they are international because of the pandemic. They were able to go international actually and create virtual programs to help people worldwide with their learning challenges and be able to have an easier life and education time. So that's basically what the Arrowsmith program does. That's my own summarization of it. I will also be giving you a more quoted summarization in the other intros I did to the other interviews. So you have that available as well. And I hope you enjoy the interview, and I hope you enjoyed the other parts as well if you got a chance to listen to those. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, my work is one piece of the puzzle. I would never say it's the whole puzzle solution. And, what I've done is, understand certain cognitive functions and the principles to leverage neuroplasticity to drive and strengthen those parts of the brain and those cognitive functions. But I believe there are multiple windows into the brain. And, some people have probably also created their own creative solutions to drive neuroplastic change. So, to me, what's exciting is that it's possible, like that our brain really is a pretty remarkable organ and very capable of change, and not just in the learning space. Because of the condition that I developed, I've lived with pain for now 30 plus years. And so there's lots of research now with neuroplasticity in pain, and I've benefited from that hugely, right? It's because, pain tracks get laid down in the brain, and there's just so much that's promising in the application of neuroplasticity to a range of conditions and a range of issues. Learning is one, but beyond learning. And to me, I'm excited to be living in the time that we're living in, because it is kind of the period of possibility in the brain, possibility in neuroplasticity, possibility in addressing conditions that we thought we just had to live with. I mean, there's still so much for us to learn, and you can't sort of open a journal or even a newspaper without another article every single day on the brain, and discoveries that we're making. To me, it's an exciting and hopeful and optimistic time to be living in.
Yeah, you kind of made me think about one of the other things that I experienced, because I have for 8 years, unfortunately, I've had chronic migraines, and I wonder if the neuroplasticity programs would help people like me with those as well, because having that along with a learning difficulty, it makes you feel like you have two learning things that are going on, that makes it even more challenging.
Yeah, well, there is, and I can send you an email afterwards, but there are a couple of resources that I could recommend, like based on good neuroscience, right? That for for chronic pain, and one that someone I know that had retractable migraines found very, very successful, and it's based on good neuroscience, right? So I'll send that to you afterwards.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we've probably covered all of them, unless you want to mention anything else.
I think just two other areas, just briefly, that I'm very excited about. I mean, we're doing a study in Australia, in Toowoomba in Queensland. I love that word, Toowoomba. It's in a Teen Challenge program. And so we're working with young adults, both there's a women's program and a men's program, who are in treatment for addiction, so drug and alcohol addiction. And we know that addiction rewires the brain in, I talked about that negative neuroplasticity. So it does that. And what we're seeing, we're going into our second year of this implementation and study, that as the individuals go through one of my cognitive programs, the same one that I developed for myself, that's like cause and effect reasoning, seeing connections, that again, it's having significant benefit. It's allowing these individuals to benefit from the rehabilitation and therapeutic process in a more meaningful way, because now they have insight. And so that's also an application for this work. As we're doing, finishing up the second year of the study, my goal is then to reach out to other centers, because obviously we had to show that theoretically and hypothetically, I believed, because I understand the brain and the nature of addiction in this part of the brain, that this would be of benefit, but we wanted to do a trial first. So now we've got the results. So that's, to me, really, really promising if we can help be a piece of the puzzle in the addiction process. And then we're also working, starting to look at cognitive decline with aging, and I can put up my hand as I'm getting older, and I can see I'm not quite as fast at processing speed, and I think, like, where did I leave my keys, and a few other things, and we know that we can keep our brain sharp and active as we age. So that's another another area that we're developing this work to benefit, the aging population and keeping the aging brain, sharp and honed for as long as possible, because that adds to quality of life. So yeah, so excited about, extending the reach and application of this work to help a whole range of individuals. And, another little area, I haven't really done so much work in this area, just a little bit, but also, sports and sports enhancement. Because again, great athletes, obviously they're very physically fit, but it's also their brain that, that
Yes.
kind of see space, the things that we struggled with, but you can enhance those capacities. And so one of my little dreams would be to take a sports team and enhance them, but it may not happen in my lifetime. I'm more committed to the individuals that struggle. Like, that's really where my passion is, but every once in a while I kind of dream about some of these other applications.
Oh, of course, I think it's a good thing to be able to dream and see if we can create it. And if, like you said, if not for your lifetime, maybe for somebody else to do in the future.
Mhm.
Um, I was going to ask you as the last question, if, somebody like me or another student who's still in college, because I graduated a while ago, and they're wanting to use one of your programs, how would they be able to find it?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. Our website, arrowsmithprogram.ca, has a wealth of information, and there is, I think it's questions at arrowsmithprogram.ca that if you email, someone will reply, and we'll look at, where the person is in the world, because they, depending on time zones, there might be a program that's more local than
Hmm.
another. So all the places that we are in the world are listed on the website. So that's also, and people can contact them directly, or as I said, come through us and we can direct appropriately. And then a number of the organizations have online programs, just like we do in Toronto. And so no matter where the person is in the world, there is a way to access it. And that's what we've been working on diligently over the past 2 years. So I would say go on the website first, and there's lots of information, and then reach out and contact us, and someone will definitely reply, because again, our commitment is to make this work accessible. And in that reply, we'll say, here are all the options, and then potentially have a conversation to see what makes the most sense, and then the person is on their way, depending on whatever program they decide to participate in.
That's wonderful that you have that available online and that they're able to find it easily. And I'm glad that you are also uh, expanding to help people with addiction and, like you said, thinking about helping people with sports and being able to, you know, spread across more the globe and help as many people as you can.
Thank you. Yeah, it's our commitment and passion. Like, what I say is, certainly for children with learning difficulties, and we work with a lot of adults, is, they shared with me at one point, like, that they stopped dreaming, like that dare.
Mm,
We talked about dreams, and to me that's tragic. Like, so I think what this work allows is, not only can they now dare to dream, but they have the cognitive resources to be able to be effective in realizing their dreams. And that's our passion and commitment.
that just gave me goosebumps. Yeah, that is really important for them to be able to have that ability of dreaming back. And you know, that also goes with creativity and being able to apply that elsewhere. So thank you so much for letting me interview you and being able to learn more about you and your work and your programs. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. I really appreciate having the opportunity and reaching people that might be interested in what we're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I definitely think there'll be some people in my audience who will want to use the programs, whether they're a student or a teacher, and maybe they'll want to be trained in it as well.
That would be amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
we would encourage that. So again, just reach out, contact us, and we'll direct the conversation in the best way possible.
Yes, and I'll put the resources that you emailed me in the podcast so that they can access those.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just stop the recording. I also wanted to let you know that I started a Patreon account for this podcast to try to get some more revenue from it. That's not the reason why I started this podcast, but I'm trying to get some revenue from the podcast because it will help me keep it going. So if you are willing to donate even $1 or $2 or $5, whatever amount is comfortable for you, to Patreon for Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, that would be appreciated. You can also use Spotify to donate money, and you can also use BetterHelp to donate money with clicking on the link and becoming a customer of BetterHelp. So those are 3 different ways you can support the podcast, and I hope that you will choose which way works for you, and that you will choose which level works for you as well. And I hope that you do it because the podcast helps you also, and that you are willing to support me in continuing to produce it. Thank you. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/ I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.